Good morning and welcome to Physics A. We're talking today still about refresher math, and we want to talk today about rearranging equations. We're going to have a lot of equations here in this class, and we're going to end up having these equations in the book, and we may not always need them in the way they've been written. So here I have an equation. I have v equals d over t. And let's say for some reason we want this equation, but we want to actually get the d by itself. And this is simple algebra, and I know some of you are sometimes nervous by that, but I'm going to show you some quick, simple ways to actually do algebra in a faster form, okay? So let's say that this problem is, and we know that the v has a value of 3, and the t has a value of 9. Well, what's the answer going to be for d? Well, that's really simple. All you got to remember is these quick rules, that if you divide, the opposite function is actually multiplication. If you're adding, the opposite function is subtracting. So what we're saying is we have this 9. It's dividing by 9, but we want to move it to the other side. So what's the opposite of division is multiplication. And so if we multiply both sides by 9, it moves to the other side. So then d is really equal to 9 times 3, which is 27. So that's just simple algebra. But let's say I asked you to do the same thing, but I asked you to do it without numbers. So you have v equals d over t, and you say, well, I got to get the t over here, so I have an equation that has just d by itself. Well, it's real simple. What is t is doing the division right now. So what's the opposite of division? Is multiplication. So to get it out of the way, we just need to multiply with it. So d is v times t, which we did here, v times t. So this is rearranging. So you just have to remember whatever a unknown is doing, or something that you want to move to the other side, it does the opposite so it can move to the other side. So if something is being subtracted over here, you would add it to get to the other side. So let's look at a couple more equations here and do some more rearranging. Let's say we have this equation right here. So we're going to deal with this one right here. It is a equals 1/2 b times h. And in this equation, let's say that we have a being equal to 6 and b being equal to 4. And so we want to know what will h be equal to. And it's pretty simple. But remember, when you plug numbers in, if you can see there's already a possible answer, I would go ahead and solve. So I would have done and multiply this with 6, and then what's 1/2 of 4 is actually 2. And then you've simplified it down. So every time you get a chance to simplify an equation, please take the chance to do it. It helps you out a whole bunch. So now what I have is I have 6 equals 2 times h, but I want the h by itself. The 2 is multiplying, so to move it over here, I must divide it. So then I get h is equal to 6 divided by 2, which is 3. So that is what I'm talking about. It's opposite to what it does, okay? Let's do this without numbers. Let's go over here. A equals 1/2 b times h. And let's get h by itself and make a brand new formula equation, but without numbers. So here, how do I get all this information to the other side? Well, we know that when something has a half out front and it's next to everything that's being multiplied, it really means it's dividing by everything. So b times h divided by 2. That's why they just put it out front and called it a half. Well, if the 2 is dividing because it's on the bottom, how do you get rid of it? You do the opposite. You multiply both sides. So the 2 gets removed. So then we have 2a equals b times h. Well, how do you get rid of the b? Well, if the b is multiplying, what's the opposite of multiplying? Dividing. So then we divide by both sides, so the b's cancel out. So h, which is the new equation I wanted, because I wanted that by itself, is now going to be equal to 2a divided by b. Okay? So that's how you do it. You just simply look at what the symbol is doing. Is it multiplying or dividing, adding, subtracting, and then do the opposite to help it get to the other side. Okay? Really simple, but you got to take your time. So let's do a little bit more complex one. that aren't too hard. Okay, we're going to do this one right here. Here we have P equals 3/4 y plus 2 times x. And I got to get to this x. Let's finally solve for x. And I want you to understand not every equation has an x in it in physics. So we need to move this 3/4 first so I can get into this equation or this bracket area. So remember, any numbers in the bottom of a fraction is dividing. So how would I get rid of the 4 if it's dividing? We would multiply it. Okay? So we would multiply it. And then the 4 would disappear. How do we get rid of the 3? If we're multiplying it, we would divide it. So what happens to a fraction when it's being multiplied? It ends up being flipped to the other side. So 3/4 becomes 4/3 on the other side. Kind of simple. Well, now we can get to the bracket because all these numbers have been canceled out. But to remove them so I'm not looking at everything, I'm going to go y plus 2x. Well, I want to get x by itself. So how do I get rid of y if I'm adding it? What's the opposite of addition? It's subtraction. So those cancel out, so I'm left with just 2x. Okay? Well, now to get the x by itself, I got to get rid of the 2. How do I get rid of 2? Well, if I'm multiplying by it, I just simply divide by it. And I cancel it out. And since I'm dividing the whole thing over here by 2, I divide everything over here by 2. So my final equation is this x now is equal to 4/3 p minus y, and that whole thing divided by 2. It's a big equation. It looks kind of scary, but I simply just follow the rule. I did the opposite. So any numbers I plug in here will always give me the correct answer as long as I do the math correctly. So we are required sometimes to move equations around because they're not set up the way we want. Sometimes they're set up with a p out front, but the question asks you what's the x. It might even ask you what's the y. And you got to be able to be good either at moving the numbers or the letters. I like to put the numbers in. I know you're much better at that. Then put the numbers in. It's easy. But just take your time and remember, do the opposite. So I want to talk about one more example. I'm going to take this example we had at the top, but instead of having the 3/4 out, I'm going to put it with the y and show you that it takes different math to do this one. Okay? But it's still the same process we've been doing all along. We've been just doing the opposite math. So here we go. We've got this equation right here. We got p equals 3/4 y plus 2x. Now it's not in a bracket, so this 3/4 is only acting upon the y, and this 2 is acting upon the x. And my goal is to try to get a new equation with just x by itself. Okay? And I'm not going to put any numbers in there. I'm just going to rearrange it and try to get a formula for x. Okay? So let's do the opposite. Do I need to remove the 3/4 first? No. I did that last time because I had to get into a bracket. There is no bracket, so I just want to move this whole entire piece to the other side. Well, what is this thing doing? It's adding. So how to get to the other side? I subtract it. So all I have to do is just simply move the whole thing subtracted to the other side, and I now have those by themselves. And then I would just simply get rid of the 2. Since the 2 is multiplying, I would just simply divide it. And since I'm dividing everything, I would divide everything over here. So that's my new equation, x equals all of this. And so I want you to be careful because, as you can see, there is a difference between the two answers. Here, the 3/4 is by the y, and here it's 4/3 over p because the fraction had to be flipped. So I'm just trying to show you, you need to be careful on how you rearrange equations. And we're going to practice this because this is a skill that you do need in this class. And remember, just the quick rules is do the opposite. If it's adding in a problem, subtract it away. If it's multiplying, divide it away. If it's dividing, multiply it away. It's real simple, not hard. Take your time, do the problems, and we'll check the answers as you go along. Okay? So there you go. You can watch this video again if you need to.